Excellencies, heads of state and heads of delegation who have been introduced from the brotherly countries of the East African community and from other friendly countries, Their Excellencies, the First Ladies, Her Excellency Vice President of Uganda, Right Honorable Speaker, His Lordship Chief Justice, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Ministers, Members of Parliament, Secretary General of the NRM Party, members of the Diplomatic Corps, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I thank their Excellencies, the heads of state, for agreeing to come and share with us this joyous occasion in spite of their busy schedule. I also thank the brother countries that sent delegations. Secondly, I congratulate all Ugandans on this occasion of the 60th anniversary of Uganda's independence. It has been quite an eventful 60 years. Naye abaganda tugamba nti ekitata muyima tekimumalako nte. If a muhima does not die, even if the cattle die, you will always get new cattle. In spite of the numerous problems over these 60 years, Uganda is now standing and marching forward. It is not only Uganda that faced problems. So did many African countries, as the President of Burundi was telling you. That is why, on this occasion, I would like to ask the African political class the following two questions. The two historical questions are, number one, are there professors of economics in Africa? Mbuza, waliwo abasoma ebya enyingiza y'amawanga. That is question number one. Are there professors of economics in Africa? Second question, is the African political class determined to build a Latin America in Africa instead of building the United States of Africa in Africa? This generation, 60 years, what are we building? Are we building a Latin America in Africa or a United States of Africa in Africa? And I'm glad many of the leaders have spoken already on this very issue. They have all spoken on it, the ones who are here. Even by the time we defeated Idi Amin in 1979, our thinking on the philosophical, ideological, and strategic issues was well crystallized. Philosophy tries to understand man and his motivations. Ideology deals with the ideas about the management of society, and strategy deals with the methods used to implement whatever plans you have for society. On the side of philosophy, we had, by that time, by the time we defeated Idi Amin, we had discovered that while there may be some altruistic actors in society, the majority of the people were egocentric. Hence, the wisdom of using the private sector in the economy without banishing completely the use of the parastatals. On the side of ideology, we discovered that in order to create prosperity for our people through the production and sale of goods and services, we need to emphasize the 4 principles. And these are the principles of patriotism, loving Uganda, Pan-Africanism, loving Africa, socio-economic transformation, and democracy. In order to use our understanding of philosophy and our ideology to create prosperity for our people, we evolved a strategy of 10 points program. Point number 5 of that program read as follows, in quotes, building an independent, integrated, and self-sustaining national economy, end of quotes. By that time, we had already discovered that one of Africa's problems has been the curse of confining itself to the export of raw materials, where we always get less than 10% of the actual value of the end product out of those raw materials, and the resultant loss of jobs to the cleverer-led outsiders. The outsiders are better led. They take our raw materials, they get more money out of them, and create jobs for their children, when ours are here dying in the ocean trying to go to Europe. The external parasite groups are always interested in perpetuating that hemorrhage of resources and development energies from Africa to other places. What is most infuriating, however, are the comprador bourgeoisie, agents of foreign interests in Africa, who do 2 things. First of all, they oppose our value addition efforts so as to frustrate our industrialization efforts. Secondly, they are always importing everything from outside, including trivialities like dead people's hair. It is these processes that have stunted Africa's growth. It is a scandal if there were people to recognize real scandals. You hear people talking of scandals, but they are talking about small scandals. This is a mega centuries-old scandal, which I don't hear anybody talking about, many people talking about. The global value for trade in coffee is US dollars 460 billion. The coffee-growing countries of the whole world get only 25 billion US dollars. And wonderful Africa gets only $2.5 billion from a figure of $460 billion. This is coffee. And much of this $2.5 billion, which is coming to Africa because of coffee, is now going to Uganda, because Uganda is taking $800 million of that. Although we are producing a lot of coffee, 8 million bags, but you hear we are still getting only $800 million out of the 2.5 billion that Africa shares from a figure of 460 billion. So you are getting very little money from coffee. How about automobiles, vehicles? The global automobile business is US dollars 2.86 trillion. Obutabalika bubiri kumpi busatu. Africa's share in the manufacture of vehicles is only $30 billion out of 2.86 trillion. And I think this goes to maybe South Africa or something like that. The global pharmaceutical business is US dollars 1.42 trillion. Africa's share is US dollars 16 billion. The global business for furniture, entebe zokutulako. Oh, banana. Is US dollars 654 billion. Africa's share is 4.86 billion. Not even 10%. Not even 10%. The global business for textiles is US dollars 1 trillion. Africa's share is US dollars 31 billion. The global business of cereals, kasori, bichebi byonna, maize and all that, 1.3 trillion. Africa's share, 275 billion. The global business for milk is US dollars 308 billion. Africa's share is US dollars 18 billion. The global business for fruits is US dollars 6 to 22 billion. Africa's share, 56 billion. The global business for electronics is 1 trillion. Africa's share is 82 billion. The global business for electrical equipment is 1.5 trillion. Africa's share is 120 billion. The global business for beef, enyama, is US dollars 414 billion. Africa's share, 300 million. Not even 1 billion. Enyama, zente, zabanyankole bamwe bawano. Abaganda nabagamba tunabo walwente nganda nazuurirako. The global business for fish, 544 billion. Africa's share, 46 billion. It is this that prompts me to ask the question, are there professors of economics in Africa? Of course, it should be the political leaders that should evolve policies about these issues. The question, however, is, if the political actors do not see this hemorrhage, why should the academicians not see it? Are they not supposed to scan the global system so as to what is going on, where and why? Are professors and academicians not supposed to use their knowledge to see what is good or bad for their people? It is a tragedy, I'm telling you. Here in Uganda, we have had to fight the neo-colonial politicians, civil servants, parasitic importing merchants on account of this hemorrhage. omulimu gwa Africa kusaka buli kintu kyonna kya kusaka entebe za kusaka entebe z'okutuulako bagenda ne basaka entebe Dubai eddungu ery'omusenyu likola entebe ffe abali mu kibira wano gye tusaka. So we have been through struggle. We have caused vertical integration in some sectors outlined below. Because when we came from the bush, we were clear. We told you, point number 5, build an economy which is independent, integrated, and self-sustaining, exactly solving this problem. But war here within Uganda, opposed by external forces and by internal groups. But still we have moved. On maize, we have moved. We have been able to produce kawunga because we used to get kawunga from Kenya. There was no kawunga here, no maize flour. Animal feeds, and we are targeting starch and ethanol. Milk we have succeeded. Processed liquid milk, ghee, butter, powdered milk, casein proteins, cheese, yogurt. Cotton, textiles, vegetable oil, animal feeds, gunpowder. Africans don't know that gunpowder comes from cotton. Even the scientists at Namronge, where they grow cotton, I asked them, do you know that gunpowder comes from cotton? They didn't know. African market is flooded by dead people's clothes. M30 from the USA and Europe, known as second-hand clothes, thereby exporting money and jobs. Sugarcane, we have been able to produce raw sugar, industrial sugar, ethanol, rum, animal feeds, and electricity. Beef, cattle, we have been able to produce beef, at least we don't import beef. And now we are beginning to produce leather. The other day I opened a leather factory. Fish, we have got 14 factories producing fish fillet. The Nile Perch Mall is being developed as a big export. These factories had gone to 22, but some had to close because of the bad fishing of fishing young fish. Bananas, our scientists have moved on the banana flour, banana starch, banana juice, banana wine, banana gin, eyo mugimanyi ndowooza. Eyo sirina kugyogerako nnyo. Waragi. Waragi oyo bamutegeera bannayuganda. Alcohol sanitizers against corona. Zyatuyamba nnyo. Here we have been having a big war with the political class and the bureaucrats over this banana project. Bananas are good for potassium and carbohydrates, apart from vitamin C in ripe bananas, amenvu. Fruits, fresh fruit exports, fruit juice, teju, we are making teju, teso juice. I gave them this name. They wanted to give it another name. I said, no, you call it teso juice. When you see all these cars which are here, Mitsubishi, I don't know what, Toyota, those are human beings in Japan. So these products of ours should get local names so that we sell our country abroad. So Teju is Teso juice. And the red of Ruero, I will give it a name of Ruero somewhere. I will sit down and give it a proper name. Fruit pulp, I have not heard whether you are producing jam. That one I have not got very well. Sorghum, Mutembei, we are now using it for brewing beer. Pines, MT, ceiling boards, furniture. Until recently, furniture for Uganda, including government departments, was being imported from China, India, Dubai, etc. Imagine that. Entebbe obutebe ezo nazo za kusaka. Mama Janet here had to have a big fight in the Ministry of Education, where they were giving tenders to companies in India to supply chairs for schools. And yet we had people here who were making furniture, but they were not being allowed by these wonderful people. Now, gold refinery. We have got a gold refinery. Finally, we are able to fully process gold. But you are not using it. The gold which is processed in Entebbe, you don't use it to make jewelry. You should make jewelry out of that gold. Limestone, cement blocks, pavers, scrap metal, steel bars, mtaimbwa, steel gate doors, used car batteries, recycled batteries, rubber, car and motorcycle tires, PVC plastics, textiles, blankets, palm oil, soap, cooking oil, sesame seeds, cooking oil, soap manufacture, marble tiles, marble. We get marble tiles and sanitary ware. Clay. We are now making industrial ceramics. These were being imported also. You can imagine. Ceramics just for floors of houses were being imported. Until somebody, a Chinese person, so why do you import these tiles? Why not make them here? You have got the best clay here. Granite, pavers, building blocks, tea leaves. There we have got 31 factories, at least, but they need to be improved. These achievements have been in spite of the stiff opposition we have been facing from the parasites and their foreign backers, such as the Monitor newspaper. To take an example, this paper, on the 22nd of May, 2022, it said in quotes, "Coffee deal stinks." That's what they were saying. Nti entegeka zetu lina kumwanyi ziwunya. Bali awo kubanga bwoyogera omuntu akuli mu maaso kiba kirungi. When you talk about somebody who is there, not backbiting him. Coffee deal stinks, but key culprit will not be punished. Key culprit is myself. I am here. I am abundant here. Let me say anankwatako. I am the promoter of the tea, of the coffee value addition. Tewali mulala akirimu Yoweri Museveni. Amanya ga Yoweri Museveni mugamanya amalala. Ebyo katubireke tulina abagenyi wano. In other words, Museveni is committing a crime by trying to add value to the Uganda coffee. Since 1986, I've been trying to get investors to add value to our coffee. On the 12th of November 1997, I wrote a letter to the Honorable Mayanja Nkangi to complain about the lack of movement on the issue of adding value to coffee. Our farmers, even today, our farmers are paid an equivalent of 70 cents per kilo of low-grade coffee. The same kilogram, when roasted, ground into powder and packaged, it sells for $12.9 in supermarkets. This is the slavery I cannot accept. How can it be that the professors, economics professors of Africa, do not see this? How can it be that the ministries of finance of Africa do not see this? On the 12th of November 1997, I wrote the following letter to the Honorable Mayanja Nkangi, who was our Minister of Finance at that time. It's a long letter, but maybe you will read it in the paper. But I can read it here. Reference is made to our cabinet meeting of 3rd of November 1997 held in Masaka. In that meeting, I brought to cabinet 3 containers of instant coffee, 1 plastic container with a capacity of 100 grams of blended coffee, Robusta and Arabica, originating from Uganda but processed abroad, was selling at $14. Just 100 grams, not even a kilo. So this letter was saying that at that time, when we get $1, somebody somewhere from a kilo, somebody somewhere in the world gets $70. That's what I was saying in this letter. You will see it in the document when it is published. After that, I engaged the Nestle group in Davos. This group which has got its label on coffee. They made it clear that they already had their factory for coffee processing in the UK and would not build a new one. Hence, we had to remain as the raw material producers, getting only 5% of the value of the coffee we grow. They, moreover, try to muddy the water by claiming that blending of the different coffees can only take place in Europe. We told them that Uganda had all the varieties, and the blending would be done here. That has been the war I've been involved in until I got the Vinci company to help me. The one who monitor was the campaigning, was saying that into a wunya. Tugenda kutegera awunya. Tugenda mpola mpola. Tutegere ani awunya. Arwana ku Uganda oba kati gye tulindako. You heard how some of the MPs were talking in that war. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere had built a coffee processing factory in Bukoba, in Tanzania, near the border of Uganda. When I heard of that, I linked our people with that effort. They were producing an end product known as Star Coffee. Unknown to me, the officials of Uganda allowed that effort to die out, or get stunted. What blindness and betrayal this is. I don't even know what is happening to that factory, the one in Bukoba, because my people pulled away without telling me. To add to the story of coffee, there is the story of iron ore. Uganda has got the purest iron ore of Tare in the world, 70% pure. The nearest is the one of Peru, which is 58% pure. An Indian company, working with some locals, had planned to export this high-grade raw material to India and to be paid US dollars 47 per ton. Out of 1,000 kilograms of this iron ore, when you process it, you get 700 kilograms of steel. A ton of steel at that time was selling at US dollars 550. So you can imagine, here, you Ugandans, you get $47. Somebody goes and gets 550 from your iron ore here. Today, a ton of steel is US dollars 700. I stopped that theft. If I had not stopped that theft, it would have meant that Uganda would be donating money and jobs to the outsiders and would be losing its natural resources and remain perpetually underdeveloped. I cannot be part of this. We have now finally got investors that are ready to build a vertically integrated steel industry that will produce high-grade products that we need for hydropower dams, for high-rise buildings, for the standard gauge railway, and for our automobile and military industries. Each year, Uganda spends US dollars 362 million on the imported steel and steel products. East Africa spends 2.5 billion on steel products if you include automobiles, which consume a lot of steel. Yes, we have 12 factories recycling scrap metal. This scrap steel helps us to get Mutembei steel bars for low-strength buildings. The products of recycled steel cannot, however, be used for high-strength structures such as dams, the standard gauge railway, etc. Hence, the endless hemorrhage. Why should this be tolerated? Why should this be happening in Africa 65 years after Ghana's independence? This crime of donating Africa's resources at a pittance to clever outsiders applies to copper, cobalt, tin, coltan, etc. Any wonder that African youth do not have jobs and must go for semi-slave jobs abroad. Those jobs are donated by African planners to the outsiders. This is the war I've been fighting here in Uganda for the last almost 62 years. I thank those elements in the NRM that seriously support this position. I appeal to all the others to support these liberation efforts. It's a matter of survival and crucial for our prosperity. The second question I want to pose again is the political class in Africa determined to build a Latin America in Africa or a United States of Africa in Africa? This question should have been answered at independence. Mwalimu Nyerere, Nkrumah, Modibo Keita, Sékou Touré, and maybe Lumumba was killed too early, raised this question and tried to answer it in a correct way. Their voices were, however, smothered by the collaborators, and instead the nebulous OAU was created. In the last 500 years, two good laboratories have emerged on the global stage. Two laboratories have emerged on the global stage: Latin America and the North American continent. European populations expanded into the two continents of the Americas that were inhabited by Indians of the West. The European populations came from Spain and Portugal to take over Latin America, and from the UK to take over North America. After 500 years, there is great prosperity in North America and misery and poverty in Latin America. Yet in terms of natural resources, water, forests, agricultural land, minerals, etc., Latin America may be richer than North America. What then accounts for the difference? The difference partly emerged from the political economic organization of the two continents. Latin America is excessively fragmented politically and economically, comprised of 12 countries, and if you include the Caribbean, the total number of countries rises to 25. The North American continent, on the other hand, is comprised of only 3 countries: Mexico, the USA, and Canada. The USA is a 3 million square miles unit with a population of 332 million people. It is that big market that stimulated the growth of the USA economy. It is not easy to be a successful business person in Honduras, population 10 million. El Salvador, population 6 million. Panama, population 4 million, etc., etc., on account of the smaller populations. In Latin America, they never even attempted to form a common market like the one of Europe. A common market, however, would not be free of problems of discordance. You have seen Britain walking out of that body, and we have seen the tensions with Hungary, Serbia, etc. Hence, the best formula, if possible, so as to create a framework for guaranteeing prosperity of people, is the USA formula, which entails both political and economic integration. Here in Africa, it points to the creation of the political federations, like the ones of East Africa. Such a federation would not only guarantee the prosperity of the people through a big market, it would also guarantee offtake for producers of goods and services, but it would also ensure strategic security of people. Nobody could dare to threaten their security. They would ensure their 4-dimensional strategic security on land, in the air, at sea, and in space. It would also deal with the problem of the suppressed fraternity of the African peoples. The 54 countries of Africa created by colonialism do not pay the slightest attention to the 4 linguistic groups of Africa. The 4 are the Niger-Congo, the Nilo-Saharan, the Afro-Asiatic, and the Khoisan. These are the 4 clusters of nations based on language. Obviously, the 54 countries do not pay attention to this. Hence, here in East Africa, you find the interaction Bantus of this area are scattered in Uganda, Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, and Kenya. Yet these are peoples whose dialects are mutually intelligible. Some months ago, at Munyonyo, I found a group of young people seated. When I engaged them, I found they were Kenyans. Of course, it is not easy to know who is a Kenyan and who is a Ugandan by looking at them. You have to ask them. I then asked one of them, a girl, what her name was. Her answer was Kwambuka. Her name was Kwambuka. Kwambuka. Where do you come from? Was my next question. Her answer, Kisii. Kisii in Kenya, the land of His Excellency, Dr. Ruto. Then my next question was, what does Kwambuka mean in Kisii? I asked the young lady. The answer, it means crossing a river or a valley. The young lady answered. That is exactly what it means in the Runyaktara dialects. You can't believe it. It is not only the interaction Bantu that are fragmented in these countries. How about our Luos in South Sudan, Congo, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Tanzania? The Kalenjin, Uganda, South Sudan, and Kenya. And the Ateke, South Sudan, Congo, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Tanzania. When you talk of the Luo, you are talking of the Alurs, Achoris, Langis, Japadola, Luos, Anuak in Ethiopia, Kumam. When you talk of the Kalenjin, you are talking of the Sabini, Pokot, Nandis, Kipsigis, etc. When you talk of the Ateke, you are talking of the Kakwaz, the Bari, the Topotha, the Turkana, the Karamojong, the Itoset, etc. Where do the Maasai belong? Are they Ateker or Kalenjin? Help the author, please. However, I know that they are certainly Nairo-Hamitic. In the case of East Africa, we have the added value, added bonus in the form of the fraternity of the Swahili language speakers. It has therefore been long, ever since the NRM and its precursors started supporting the struggle for the realization of the dream of the East African Federation. If we had achieved that by 1963, as the elders had intended, this part of the world would be very far. Some of the political elite let down Africa in 1963 by frustrating that effort. If that federation had been launched in 1963, you can be sure that Idi Amin would never have taken power in Uganda. There would have been no genocide in Rwanda or the killings in Burundi. Congo would have stabilized long ago. The problems of South Sudan would have been solved much earlier, and the problem of Somalia may not have turned out the way it did. Even today, the sort of problems we are facing would be easily solved. Take the problem, and I'm glad His Excellency Ruto spoke on this. Take the problem of high food prices, for instance. A few years ago, Uganda produced 5 million tons of maize. Uganda consumed only 1 million tons because Ugandans have other foods. It is only institutions and the animal feeds manufacturers that use maize. There was therefore a surplus of 4 million tons, which had no market in East Africa on account of the non-tariff barriers, protectionism. The prices collapsed, and the farmers in Uganda walked away from growing maize. Only now to be told that there is a big demand for maize, and even people are dying. The store of maize is the same as the store of milk, sugar, rice. Some Ugandans wanted me to stop Tanzanian rice. Please, I would not do that. If the Tanzanians are growing rice more cheaply, let them grow it and you buy from them. And if you want, you can apply and you shift and go and ask the Tanzanian government to allow you to do rice in Tanzania. In my opinion, East Africans will be better off if the most efficient East African producers are encouraged so that the whole of the region benefits. Recently, I was told of some attempts to block rice from Tanzania in order to protect the inefficient rice growers of Uganda. I could not accept such blindness. Why? First of all, punish Ugandans to consume expensive rice while Tanzanian brothers can produce cheaper rice. The other blindness is that you should remember that if you block Tanzanian rice, Tanzania will also block something else from Uganda. Where then is the future of prosperity for our region? Why block East African products and open our markets for subsidized goods from Europe, China, Brazil, etc.? Those should be the ones to be blocked because they are unfairly selling in our market. Foreign government subsidized goods versus our unsubsidized goods. If you allow subsidized Brazilian products to kill the market for Uganda's sugar in East Africa, what return benefit will East Africa get from Brazil? What does Brazil give you in return? East Africa is a potential superpower of the League of India or China. If we integrate economically and politically, assisted fortunately by the Swahili language, which is part of the heritage of this area. If our economics professors wake up and see the hemorrhage the NRM revolutionaries have been seeing ever since the 1960s on account of only producing raw materials, and the political class determines not to build a Latin America in Africa, but instead build a United States of Africa in Africa, a very prosperous and secure future for Africa would be ensured. In spite of the missed opportunities in the East African region, and in spite of so many avoidable mistakes that were committed by different actors, Uganda finally stabilized and started not only growing, but also undergoing socio-economic transformation ever since 1986. The small independence enclave colonial economy of 1962, of the 3 C's and 3 T's, had by 1986 shrunk by 25%. The 3 C's were coffee, cotton, and copper, and the 3 T's were tobacco, tea, and tourism. By 1986, all the 3 C's had disappeared except coffee, that was still limping on. All the 3 T's had disappeared except tobacco, which was still limping on. Having lost 24 years, because you are talking of 60 years, actually you should be talking of 36 years. Because 24 of the 60 years were lost. Having lost 24 years of the 60 years, the NRM, our movement, had fortunately had many years of clarifying our ideological, philosophical, and strategic position on almost all issues of society and economy. We had already distilled our 4 principles of patriotism, Pan-Africanism, socio-economic transformation, and democracy. To realize the 4 principles, we put forward the 10 points program, out of which point number 5 was the one guiding us to build an integrated, independent, and self-sustaining national economy that rejected the slave role of confining ourselves to producing raw materials. The principle of patriotism struck a blow at the politics of identity, sectarianism of religion and tribes, and push forward the politics of legitimate interests of the people. That is why, ever since 1989, the NRM always won all elections by absolute majority in both popular votes and the electoral colleges on the first round. We have never had a second round here. And I congratulate His Excellency Ruto for winning on the first round. In the 1962 independence elections, no party could win by absolute majority because they had fragmented the electorate into sectarian groups that could never attract broad support. Guided by our principle of Pan-Africanism, when we won power, we worked with Mzee Hassan Mwinyi, Mzee Benjamin Mkapa, Mzee Daniel Arap Moi, supported by Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, who was still alive that time, to revive the East African community, which was re-inaugurated on the 30th of November, 1999. Guided by the same principles, we stood with the African brothers in South Africa, Namibia, South Sudan, Rwanda, Burundi, Somalia, etc. It is this principle that educates us not to aim at building a Latin America in Africa, but building a United States of Africa in Africa to ensure the prosperity of our people and the strategic security of Africa. Our belief in patriotism and Pan-Africanism enabled us to build a strong national army for the first time since the collapse of the Batrese Empire around the year 1500 AD. This is partly on account of the ideology of anti-sectarianism. We do not look at soldiers with sectarian lenses, but with soldiership and ideological lenses for patriotism. That is how we were able to build an army that could go for so long and anywhere for either no pay or low pay. This strong army has been always backed by a vast structure of popular support in the form of the RCs, resistance councils, diluted by the politicians to LOCs. They didn't like resistance. They changed it to that they are local. I also kept quiet. This peace architecture has enabled the economy to recover and thrive. By the end of last financial year, the size of the economy was $45 billion, having grown from $1.5 billion in 1986. The economy had therefore expanded 30 times since 1986, and we had entered the lower end of the middle income status with a per capita GDP of US dollars 1,046. This was in spite of the population growing from 14 million in 1986 to 43 million now. We could have achieved more if it was not for the obstructions we normally get from careerist politicians and administrators or neo-colonial agents. One of the big mistakes has been the refusal by the careerist political administrative class to transform the pre-capitalist traditional society into a food secure and commercially active class with a chibaro, a sabu, looking for the most remunerative enterprises compared to the family land size and generally getting involved in the money economy by the whole society. This is in spite of the guidance we have been giving the country ever since 1995, when I made a countrywide tour giving facts of what can be done after I had carried out successful transformation in the cattle corridor. On account of this negligence by the political and administrative classes, by 2013, the homesteads that were still in the subsistence sector were 68%, having been 96% in 1969. That is when I involved the army in the form of OW, Operation Wealth Creation. The figures show that there has been a decline in the homesteads that still work for the stomach. With the parish development model and the Myoga, not forgetting the bigger industrialization and modernization programs, we are sure to finally involve all the homesteads in the money economy. We have sent money to the parish circles and to the Myoga. This is going to unleash massive production of food, beverages, other raw materials that must be processed by factories. Moreover, agriculture will now be firmly anchored on irrigation. Therefore, the erraticness of production in agriculture is over. This in turn means the damage to the water bodies must stop because we need the water for irrigation. Out of the 60 million acres of Uganda, 8.9 million are covered by water bodies and wetlands. And assuming we have forests covering 30% of the country, that would leave us 15.3 million acres for agriculture. If 10 million acres were used for intensive agriculture of the 4 acres model, that would give us 2.5 million small farms. In the Rwengaju area, our small-scale farmers using only 1 acre are employing 15 people per farm. Using this conservative figure, the 2.5 million small farms would employ 37.5 million people. Assuming the other 5 million acres were for medium-scale farming, using farms of 100 acres each, we should have 50,000 farms. These, in addition to the intensive agricultural activities of the small farms, would use extensive agriculture to produce maize, sugarcane, cotton, tea, tobacco, etc., products that only make economic sense when they are produced on a large scale. These would create their own jobs. All this is just in agriculture. How about industry, manufacturing? How about services? How about ICT? The problem, therefore, is not jobs. The problem is the neo-colonial thinking that is always off the point and not able to understand the strong potential of Africa. Now that we have solved the problem of electricity, we are moving full steam on all the opportunities of the value addition in agro-processing, fruit processing, animal feeds for maize, cassava flour and starch, banana flour and starch, ethanol from different sources, etc., paper from forest products, sealing boards from forest products, vertically integrated steel industry, food processing of copper, fertilizer industry from our phosphates, the pathogenic economy of vaccines and pharmaceuticals, and the diagnostics and sanitizers, and the knowledge industry of automobiles and electronics, as you saw here, these which are already being made here. With our East African brothers and sisters, the sky is the limit. Recently, I'm about to finish. Mnange myaka enkaga. 60 years, please, muzikirize, allow me. Munikubali miaka 60, sio kitu rahisi. Wacha nitoa maneno yote. Recently, there was yet another manifestation of imperialistic arrogance and hegemonism by elements in the European Parliament, whereby they decreed from Brussels that East African crude pipeline should not be constructed until those arrogant actors permit us to do so. Parasitic elements from that part of the world have been causing problems for Africa and the world for the last 500 years. It all started with 1453 AD, when the Turkish Ottomans captured Constantinople and blocked the land route for Europe to the east for trade in silk, spices, etc. The Europeans, led by Portugal, legitimately started looking for an alternative sea route to the east to outflank the blockade, partly due to our internal weaknesses caused by the bankrupt tribal chiefs. What started as a search for alternative route to the east soon became a mega slave trading phenomenon: colonialism, exploitation, looting, and genocide in Africa, Asia, and the Americas. By 1900, the whole of Africa had been colonized except for Ethiopia. However, soon the Africans and other colonized peoples reorganized and launched a massive anti-colonial movement in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the struggle for equal rights by the black nation in the USA. The African National Congress was founded in South Africa in 1912. By 1994, the arrogant imperialists were defeated in South Africa. Earlier on, the colonized peoples had achieved victories in Indonesia, India, Indochina, Mozambique, Kenya, Algeria, Angola, Guinea-Bissau, Zimbabwe, Namibia, and the whole of Africa, either through armed struggle or through peaceful mass struggle. 1994, with the liberation of South Africa, should have marked the end of imperialist arrogance and meddling in the affairs of their former victims. However, some elements are incorrigible, as you can see from this resolution. The patriotic forces in the world are, however, much stronger, and the patriotic forces in Uganda are much stronger and very capable in all dimensions. The imperialists use the mistakes and the weakness of Africa. Otherwise, Africa is invincible, as was shown by the victories in Mozambique, Angola, and Zimbabwe. East Africans, therefore, should not worry about those arrogant people, that those arrogant people can stop the oil project in East Africa. If any actor tries to delay our project, we shall decisively deal with that betrayal according to the relevant laws. We shall develop all the aspects of the project with willing partners. Initially, I was not interested in the pipeline. I was only interested in the refinery to produce petrol, diesel, aviation fuel for East African market. It is Total who insisted, even when Uganda had to give away US dollars 20.7 per barrel to use the pipeline. In the end, we support the pipeline because it contributes something modest to our Tanzanian sisters and brothers who, under Mwalimu's leadership, contributed so much to Africa, including Uganda, in the anti-colonialism effort. Besides, the pipeline corridor provided by the Tanzanian government will bring to us gas from Tanzania and Mozambique, because our gas resources are not that big. We need gas for fertilizer manufacture, to produce chemicals, etc. Therefore, down with the imperialists, parasitic meddlers. However, Africa should know that even during the anti-colonial struggle, we had progressive whites that were on our side. Lord Fenner Brockway, Sir Dingo Foot, Professor George Shepard, etc. worked with Mzee Musazi in our anti-colonial struggle. Even today, there are progressive forces in Western Europe who can work for the common good of humanity, who are not part of white chauvinism. We shall seek them out. Most importantly, the oil project and other projects are unstoppable. The NRM has always had a correct philosophical, ideological, and strategic grasp of all issues. Nothing can derail us, in spite of the good movement in the world to curb the emissions of the greenhouse gases and move away from oil as fuel for cars. Our oil will remain valuable. We shall still need the oil for textiles like the shirt I normally put on. It is 65% polyester, which is from oil. We need hydrocarbons for fertilizer, nitrogen, for plastics, for tar, for our roads. As you saw, we are moving on the electric vehicles, electric pikipikis, using hydrogen for steel manufacture, etc. However, our oil will remain useful for other non-polluting purposes. All living things have carbon in them. Carbon is not a problem. The problem has been greed of foreigners who jump from this to that looking for money without careful and honest study. Before the coming of foreigners, Africa was using solar energy, wind energy, etc. for drying things, processing millet, and using carbon for blacksmithing in a controlled way. With the more understanding of natural laws, science, if we would do away with greed, all these products can be used safely and sustainably. When oil will no longer be needed for driving cars, it will serve us longer for use for other purposes. I thank everybody. In particular, I thank their excellencies, His Excellency Ndayishimiye, President of Burundi and Chairman of the East African Community, His Excellency Salva Kiir Mayardit, President of South Sudan, His Excellency Sheikh Mohamud, President of the Republic of Somalia, His Excellency William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Dr. Ali Mwinyi, President of Zanzibar, and the Chairman of the Revolutionary Council representing the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, His Excellency Ebua Jean-Pierre, Vice Prime Minister and Minister of Public Service of DRC, and His Excellency Professor Manasi Nshuti, Minister of State for East African Affairs,